Am I right? Am I audible? Right. My name is Fernandes, and I work with the Lavendon Group. The Lavendon is a company that originates in the UK, and our business is basically man lifts and man lifts. That's the only thing we do. We're market leaders in Western Europe and Middle East with over 21,000 machines. And now we've entered into the Indian market. But I'm not here to talk about Lavendon and what Lavendon has done. I'm here to talk about a topic which I'm very passionate about. I've been living this for the last 12 years, and I'm here to make a difference to the Indian market. I've been with the group since 2001, so I've been almost 12 years in this business, breathing, eating, and spreading the good news of this business. And in my experience in the last many years, what I have learned is that this business is a very simple business. I see here many people who are veterans as manufacturers, possibly people in the rental business. And so when Rakesh asked me to talk about this business, it was a natural thing for me to talk about. So it's a very simple business. So how do we do a very simple business? We do it very simply. It's not complicated, as a lot of the rental companies here will point out. We have few machines, and if a customer wants to work at a height of 20 meters, he gets a machine to work at a height of 20 meters. That's it. That's how simple it is. But the difference between supplying a 20-meter machine and supplying a 20-meter machine that can be hazardous is the point that I want to talk about. Now, working on the ground is a lot easier than working when you're up in a cherry picker. Why is it? It's because the conditions are different. The conditions are entirely different because you are above the ground and there is a risk. So there is a potential hazard when you're working above ground. You could be standing at a height of around 5 meters, and an impact through a fall at that height of 5 meters can kill somebody. So what I'm here to talk about today in this brief period of time is that we take care, or we are responsible for people's lives when they put their people, when they put their own selves, when they put their workmen into our machines. So we have a commercial responsibility towards our companies, but at the same time, we also have a moral responsibility towards not just that company who's hiring the machine of us, but it's that person who's in the basket. And that to me is very important, because what you see is that people who are in the basket are generally low-income group people. And one accident can change the future for that person, his family, to the point that I have come across some instances where people wish they were dead after an accident rather than being able to walk again or live again and be a burden on the family members. So, rightly, I'm here to talk about setting the standard, but what is the standard? Right? Do we need to reinvent the wheel? There is a very good standard that has been set in America. There is a good standard that's been set in Western Europe. It's the same standard that has been followed in parts of Asia, that is Japan, East Asia, the Middle East. And I don't see our business any different. At the end of the day, if you're using a 20-meter machine in New Delhi, or you're using a 20-meter in Bangkok, or you're using it in Chicago, you have to have the same machine to do the same job. So what makes us different? I think it's a question of mindset that makes us different. I think we have to approach our business as specialists. Approach our business, and how do we approach our business as specialists? We're responsible as rental companies to offer a piece of kit to a company or to an individual who wants to use that kit to work. Now what do? Do we pick up the phone, answer it and say, yeah, I got a piece of kit and you will have it? I think that's fine. Doing that is fine. There's no problem with that. But I think that is the last bit that has to be done, and there's a lot more that has to be done before that. It's how we maintain, how we look after our machines. It's very simple, because unlike a forklift, a crane, or any of the other equipment, the cargo that goes in this is a human being. And what happens? It's a human being who's risking his life. So, we've got to maintain our machines. And that's where we've got to take a call as people who are morally responsible is, do I take off that joystick and put a toggle switch? Or do I give a machine that I know is expecting to have a few problems? And that's the moral responsibility that should be the guiding compass, because just as everything in life we do, we have the freedom as well as we have a conscience. And I think if we are able to balance that, I think we are able to run a very good business, because at this moment in time, the Indian market understands that there is a type of machine, but don't fully understand the potential of what it can do. And I mean this in a good way and in a dangerous way as well, because people don't realize that these equipment, if not used rightly, is like electricity. It can cook. I just want to share an instance with you when I went to a site a few weeks ago. There was an operator who was operating a machine from the ground, and when I approached him and I explained that this was not the right thing to do, he said I couldn't go in the basket because I didn't carry my sweater and it's very cold. And that's the casual approach that has been towards operating these machines. Now, why do I find that offensive? No, I do not find that offensive. It's simply because he has not been trained. So while we have the Europeans and the Americans innovating, having things like soft touch, having material handling attachments, I think we have to start looking into our backyard and see what is it that we want as the minimum standard. Do we want solid ties as the minimum standard? Do we want to make sure that all operators operate machines from baskets and they do not operate machines from ground because it can kill? If you cast your minds to a KHL report, I think it was around a couple of years ago, it's an incident that happened in Jeddah. It was a university. And two people operating the machine up very high, around 25 meters. One had his lanyard, the other didn't have a lanyard. It was being operated from the base. The basket tilted. One person, both fell off. The guy with the lanyard was hanging on because of the lanyard. The guy who had no lanyard crashed and died. So, how do we react as a group of people who want to make it safer for people to use these machines? Because, as Alex rightly said, when you cast your mind 10 years ago, how many machines were used in this country? It's a question I always ask myself when I reach dead end. So rather than fighting time and fighting and going out in search of the same jobs, the market is huge. The government has committed $3 trillion over the next 5 years. And I may be way off target when I talk about these things. And even the McKinsey report, which was here 2 years ago, it says 54 Chicagos that have to be built in the next 10 years. That may be wrong. But if it's not 54 Chicagos, even if it's 2 Chicagos, that's a lot of work for every one of us here. I was talking to an Australian gent, and he says, we use a lot of machines in mines. And I was wondering, why would a machine be used in the mine? And basically what they're talking about is cementers. They use a lot of equipment there. Now, are we following those trends? Are we going to those places? Are we going to those nooks and crannies? When you look at it, you find a requirement for 20 machines. And the best thing is, the guy doesn't even know he needs a machine. So I think the opportunities are huge. And as companies, all that we need to do is need to protect ourselves. Because if an equipment fails, it just doesn't fail for my company or yours. It fails for the industry. People begin to lose confidence in it. And people begin to question, is this the right way? And if we think that this is the right way, and if we are committed to it being the right way, then I think the association that we hope to have works. But again, when we want to form the association, it's got to be like-minded people. And each one who wants to be part of the association and make that difference has got to ask himself the question, or herself the question, sorry because I see women in this room, is, does my bread and butter depend on this business? Is this business a hobby, or is it fundamentally what I want to do? Because there could be an instance where I compromise on this business because probably there's some other business that excites me more than this one. So I think we need to take a call and be really genuine about it and say, if my bread and butter depends on this business, then I'm in for it because I stand by it. If it fails, I will work for it, and if it succeeds, I'll enjoy the business. Now, what are we willing to do in terms of training and education? Because there is a lot of education that has to be done. A lot of operators think that the foot pedals in these machines are accelerators, which clearly it isn't. What are we doing about that? I think the guy doesn't even know that the difference between a foot pedal and an accelerator. I think we have to teach them. Now, when we look at the West, one of the big things is iPad. But again, iPad, their courses are in English. And a lot of the guys who are operating these machines don't speak or read or write English. So how can iPad help these guys? And I think the association's got to get together and put some thought into it. Probably use pictures in training people. Because training is key here. We spend a lot of time trying to learn to drive a car. Now this is a lot easier than driving a car, especially because you're doing it on a construction site. But applying it to the job that you need to do deserves a little bit of looking after, deserves a little bit of training. And I think that with a little bit of commitment, we can make this business a fantastic business in India. All that we need to do is stay committed. All that we need to do is set the standard and abide by it. The rest of it follows very easily. I have been associated with a business in the United Arab Emirates. 12 years ago, no one wanted a scissor lift. There was a scaffold which was 16 to 18 meters high on wheels, pushed by around 7 or 8 Asians from one part of the project to the other part of the project, and they were very happy with it until we decided to throw something free of charge and let them use it. Like a can of Coke, they had a sip and they liked it, and they wanted it there. And I think we should do more of that. We should educate people, talk to people, pioneer, train people how to do it, and stay committed. Thank you.
When you entered the Middle East market, say 11 years ago, what was the level of regulation in the, like you said, there were Asians pushing the 17, 18 meter high scaffolding.
Yeah.
So what's the train for the regulation coming in, and was there an industry, or was it the municipality or the government? I mean, just throw some light on it, how it evolved in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, to be honest, there was never a regulation in place, and until today, there is no regulation in place. It's exactly the way it is in India. the regulation is in pockets. And the same is in India. I've been to job sites which are extremely stringent and would pay attention to every single detail, and they'd inspect the machine, not just kick the tires, open the bonnet, check the leaks, check the performance, etc. And it's exactly the same there, but on a much larger level. Now what has happened is exactly like a can of Coke. People have had a can, and they had a sip and they found it refreshing. They say, I'd like to have some more. Because they realize that the traditional method is cumbersome, it's slower, and there's a potential for accident. What happens when there are accidents? Your insurance goes up. I'm not talking about the loss of life, which is the most important, but your insurance goes up. You have mental fatigue. You have problems with the government. You lose a lot of downtime. But when contractors realize that what they are paying, and we've done a study, Lavendon has done a study about it, if it's a normal project, 0.2% of the value of the project is what is spent on power access equipment. Now, power access equipment, on the other hand, mitigates 50% of the risk that's associated on any site. Because there are very experienced people here, and they would say that 50% of the accidents on sites happen because of falls. Whether it's a man falling from a structure or it's material falling down. But 50% of all risks. And we need to look at the contractors in the eye when they're haggling over a few rupees, and talk about 2% or 0.2% of the projected value, which is equivalent to probably the paint on a building. So 0.2% of the project value on one hand, and 50% of the risk mitigated on the other hand. Hence a no-brainer. And I think a lot of people have realized that and are coming to terms with it. Any other questions?